great Karoga, the land of Jaloja. Hail, mighty leader, the great bird of prey. We kick the fannies of foul Turdistanis. We found all your orphans and took them away. We
a humble turd graced a ride along with Michael J. Crawford. Along came this song. The Turdistani fought a bedridden devil. His army of clones at his jaw did they eat. Turdistani fought. They came after us, crossed the borderline, took all our offers to send down their mines, while the feathered beast read out Dear Bob. So cried the trekker, this madness must stop. Toss a coin to your trekker, oh planet of plenty, oh planet of plenty, oh. Toss a coin to your trekker, oh planet of plenty. The vile Kurogans fled and hid what they had stole. The orphan was shackled and kept in the cold. But he did not relent. The Turd King was hell-bent. He slayed the Kurogans, then to Birdhouse he went. And with a mighty blow he struck that button red. The mighty bird folded in two by his bed. That's my epic tale, our champion prevailed. So let's drink a toast with some Romulan ale. Toss a coin to your trekker, oh planet of plenty, oh planet of plenty, oh. Toss a coin to your trekker, oh planet of plenty, oh planet of plenty, oh. Toss a coin to your trekker, oh planet of plenty, oh planet of plenty, oh. Toss a coin to your trekker, the great Turdistani.
It's the anti-checker.
We will return to your scheduled programming shortly, or we are currently experiencing technical difficulties.
What is going on, everybody? Michael J. Crawford, the Anti-Tricker here. And yes, I apologize for making you suffer through some of Bird's singing.
Give our orphans love.
But you see, it's just to demonstrate the difference between Turdistan and Karoga. You can tell by our respective anthems the difference between our two nations. I don't need to say anything other than that. So Kronos was first, actually, slightly before I got started. I was actually, and Bird was like, any time now, Captain Cat says here. Now, the reason that there was a couple extra minutes there is because Joshua was walking Auntie, and so I was just waiting for her to get back. Don't forget to switch to live chat, rationer, anti-trigger. Yeah, I know. Try not to be confused. Don't forget to turn on the mic. Hey, I've been better about that lately. Make sure anti-trigger I turned on the mic. Kronos wants to know what kind of bird does bird of prey identify as. We already know it's a turkey. Come on. Let's see. Going that. Let's see. Not this again. Yes. Well, like I said, it was. I didn't mean. I don't like to make you suffer by listening to birds sing.
Thank you.
But it's mainly just to let you guys see the difference between our two regimes. Kronos says, why? And Captain Cat says, no. All hail Mothman, first Kurogan supervillain. Good to see you, by the way, Kronos. I didn't know that you were a Kurogan supervillain, which makes you a hero, actually. And so, let's see. Bird been drinking again? Well, that's all he does, really. And then we switched to Planet O'Plenty, and everybody got happy. See how it works? You listen to Kuroga, which is the original name of the Kurogan National Anthem is We Will Oppress You, and then compare that to the Turdistani anthem, which song is Planet of Plenty. I mean, really, what more do I need to say? Vile Mike says, thanks for stopping the premiere. Well, actually, I stopped my live stream for your premiere, something that Bird didn't do. Not that it's a contest or anything, but if it was a contest, I won. Reza says you need a Mars attack clip. Yeah, that would be perfect. Do not run. We are your friends. Excuse me. Captain Cat was asking who wrote the song. So Planet of Plenty and actually the Kurogan National Anthem were both written by Aberjam. So he's actually really good at writing lyrics. So yeah, Aberjam, you get all the credit for that. And speaking of which, Aberjam says, greetings, oh great 25% different Turdistani. Oh yes, the 25% rule rears its ugly head once again on Birdstream. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit. Bird, you know I love you, man, but you're wrong. There is no need for 25%. There was never a need for 25%. It was an artistic choice. It was never a legal requirement, ever. Hello there, an Enterprise D ship. Hey, Stuart, how you doing? And let's see. Aberdeen, you wrote, why did the other hurt my ears? Well, part of it was because of birds singing. And you should actually, the original version of the Kurogan National Anthem was actually the accurate version, but that's why Aberjam has been locked in a prison cell for the last several weeks. We've been trying to liberate him. Where are you going, Auntie? Taking your bone and running away with it? Well, you want to hang out over there with your bone, you can. Everybody's going to miss you, though. Okay. Well, it's your call. It's your call. So, Auntie wants to hang out over there with her bone. So, okay. We'll turn off the anti-cam for now. So, Springtime is in the house. Says, how's it going? Long live Turdistan. Death to Kuroga. Absolutely. And so, let's get over and out, says Max. I'm not sure why. Number One Sci-Fi says, did you get the soundbite from Dear Bop? I did not. I was actually not listening to much of the Dear Bop because I was watching Vile Mike's premiere of The Cage Part 2, and then I came back just to remind Bird to wrap it up because I was waiting on him. Rambling Canuck says, hello, how you doing? Chrono says, is there a day that isn't a red turd day for you? Not lately, honestly, but I'm hoping soon. Did you do a sound check, Edric? I think you should test it with another Bird song. I don't know.
Try to deny it if...
So yeah, I think the sound's working okay. Jeff says greetings. Sci-Fi Nation says greetings, Andrew, the evil propaganda spouting evil dictator of the turd stains and fellow nerds. I'm definitely not evil. Andre is here from Bosnia. Good to see you, my friend. Haven't seen you in a little bit. Vile says, I will have to thank you somehow for that, maybe in a month for a very special episode. No worries, Vile. You know what? I'm glad I could encourage people to check you out because you and your daughter put together some fun Star Trek reviews. And Multi-Gunman says, we need 24/7 live anti-cam on YouTube channel. Well, I don't know. Dante, you want to do a 24/7? She's just chewing on her bone. She doesn't care. Piano Dean says, did Aberjam sing that as well? As a matter of fact, yes, I believe so. And I believe Aberjam's exact words is that he had to put his nuts in a vice to hit that last note. And Aberjam, that song is stuck in my brain. Well, that's good. That means it's working. How's the arms race going? Pretty good. We've liberated another city, so that's good. And Bird of Prey 5 donated $2. Thank you, Bird of Prey. So uncharacteristically generous of you. And when I say that, I just mean it as exactly how that sounds, because usually you're kind of a dick. But number 28, the latest, and I think the animation is just, if you, the funny thing is that, as many of you know, Fox, the television network, has, put out a lot of animated shows, particularly on Sunday night as part of their lineup, adult animated cartoons. And of course, we all know that Disney has recently, acquired all the Fox IPs and the Fox Studios and all that. So, what they want to do is they want to continue with some of the classic Fox programming, but they need to rebrand it properly. So, we got that. We got to work on that. So, and meanwhile, Sean puts in £5. Thank you so much. Says, greetings from England. So come on, Star Trek Picard. What do you reckon? I've got so much crossed in. Hope that it's good. Trailer is promising. I'll tell you. I'll talk about that in just a minute. All right, give me just a couple minutes, and we will talk about that. T-Berg says, I need a super chat. I just watched Avenue 5 and my brain crashed. Well, I'm sorry that your brain crashed. I don't know what Avenue 5 is exactly, but I'll tell you what, we'll put something on there for you. But first and foremost, so what I was saying, and then I will get to Sean, your topic, and we'll play something for you too, T-Berg. But here's the thing. So Disney, of course, owns all the Fox IPs, but they don't want to put out the same shows that Fox had to avoid confusion. So this is the new upcoming series coming to the new not Fox network to replace a show that's currently airing on the Fox network. So instead of Bob's Burgers, we're going to get this. Now, here's the catch. Did you catch every little reference? Because that was very much very similar to the Bob's Burgers opening. And just like Bob's Burgers, every little thing in there was important. So we'll see how much of it you guys caught as time goes on. And so T-Berg, we need to put on something for you, huh? How about...
This is the...
I don't want to make you suffer with that one. Let's do...
I now pronounce...
No, definitely not that one. No, definitely not that one. Am I on the wrong... Yeah, I'm on the wrong page. Let's go to... Gosh, I can't remember. I think... Is it this one? There we go.
So, does anybody really know why we're fighting anyway?
Well, I think... Hey, didn't he vote for Trump?
He did.
Get him!
So remember, if anyone has an opinion, they're probably wrong.
Now we know!
And knowing is half the battle.
There it is. All right, so now... let me see. What I'm going to do here is, Sean, I'm going to get caught up to your super chat, and then we'll talk about Picard for a couple of minutes. Zachary says, how's the liberation movement going? Not too bad. We liberated a major metropolitan area from Krogan control just today. Resident says, that's fake news. Aberjam UK is not within Krogan borders. Actually, yes, he is. The true Krogan national anthem is safe in the hands of Anti-Checker. Yes, that's right. And we will release it when the time is right. What's the new 28? Well, we just played it. Where did this 25% come from regarding Star Trek? It started, honestly, with, I believe that the first channel to really make it very popular to talk about was probably Midnight's Edge. And Alexander puts in $2, says Snake Eyes is an a-hole. He deserves it. Okay, Alex. Wow, was not expecting that. So Midnight's Edge talked about it a little bit. This whole thing started when a member of the production team said that they were legally obligated to make sure that everything was at least 25% different than previous Trek. And a lot of people reported on this and stuff, but that person then later recanted that statement and said, no, they were simply told to do things 25%. He had no knowledge of it being a legal requirement. And so the problem is that this kind of ballooned out of control and conspiracies came into being and stuff that, oh yeah, it's a legal requirement because Bad Robot is licensing Star Trek and it's a super secret backdoor deal. It's not really the Prime Universe. That the Prime Universe that they talked about when they made Star Trek 2009 is something other than the Prime Universe that the fans think of, and that when they say that Discovery's on the Prime Universe, it's not really the Prime Universe. It's the Discovery Prime Universe, which is different than the canon Prime Universe. You know, and just things ballooned out of control. No, settle down. All right. The simple fact is that CBS owns Star Trek. Paramount is the only licensee of Star Trek, and Paramount owned the rights to stuff that was developed specifically for the films, i.e. all the Kelvin universe stuff and things like the Sovereign class Enterprise, stuff that was developed specifically for their film IP after the breakup of CBS and Paramount. Keep in mind that the earlier films that took place in the TOS era, the basic Wrath of Khan era films that we think of. And Thomas puts a couple of bucks in, wants to see number 28. Give me just a couple minutes and I'll play it again. So those were prior to that split up, so those were still in the property of CBS. That's why in CBS Trek they can show Miranda class and they can show Excelsior class and stuff like that, but they can't show the Sovereign class. That's really the only one that belongs exclusively to Paramount. Well, all this was like, just for some reason in the fandom and stuff, was just becoming this huge conspiracy theory. But the truth is the 25% reference just came from what this whole thing was Kurtzman and the other creators of Discovery wanted Discovery to look unique and different than every other iteration of Trek. So they went to their artists and they said, everything must be 25% different. That way, nothing would look like prior Trek and it would stand out and be different. That's all it was. Now, there's no legal requirement to it, and the fans, of course, hated it, and they were very vocal about hating it, and I think that's part of the reason that we're at least getting a glimpse of a Galaxy-class starship for the first time since the days of old, right? So that's nice to see, but we'll see what they do with the actual series. So that's the whole hullabaloo about 25%. Alexander says, you lost 20 subscribers because you left the Phantom Menace. Good then that people left. Well, I'm sorry if I pissed off some people, but, it happens. And, yeah, that's all I was going to say. And the thing is that I still stand by what I was saying. I think that people looking for things to be angry about, I disagree with. I don't like the idea. People that are all upset because Disney is changing Fox Searchlight to Searchlight and 20th Century Fox to 20th Century Productions I'm sorry, they're just looking for things to hate. It's not a thing of malice or anything like that. It's Disney separating themselves from Fox because they don't want people to confuse, because Fox as a company still exists in the form of Fox Sports and Fox News. Disney doesn't want to be associated with them. So instead, they rename their IPs to Searchlight and 20th Century Studios so nobody thinks it's Fox. That's all it is. People are coming up with reasons to hate Disney over it. I think that's silly. Just like people coming up with reasons to hate Picard before the show actually starts is silly. Now, if Picard Episode 1 comes out in a couple of days and it sucks, that's different. Then I'll be right there. If it sucks, believe me, I'll be right there screaming at the top of my lungs about it. But if it doesn't suck, let's give it a chance, people. Average Jeff says it was a small vice. Okay. And so Zachary says, Trek guys did a review of the TNG episode Descent Part 1 and lead up to Picard, and looking back, they hated the writing and fully gave it a 3 out of 10. Wow. Chrono says, that's not Bob's Burgers. Well, no, it's Bird's Burgers. Multi-Gun says, love the new Super Chat. Yes, and by the way, Joshua not only did all the animation, he actually did the music as well. Obviously, one of those little 16-bit emulators he likes playing around with. Echo Base says, hello, Trigger Chat. How's everyone doing tonight? Good to see you, Echo Base. And by the way, if you haven't seen it already, you should check out Echo Base's epic sequel trilogy documentary they put on their channel. Yes, I'm in it for all of about 3 seconds, but I'm proud to have been able to contribute a little something into it. So Echo Base, great job. I watched it the other day. I absolutely loved it. What is 27? Never listed 27. 27 is the one where I'm telling Joshua not to hide people's faces to avoid having to do lip sync. Picard is literally anti-Trek, dystopian, bleak, horrible future, everything Roddenberry didn't want. Well, first of all, Bleez a Puss, you don't know that. You're assuming that from the trailer. Let's wait until the show comes out before we start ripping it to pieces. And by the way, as far as what Roddenberry wanted, well, doesn't matter, honestly. And Gene's vision, and I'm sorry, Gene Roddenberry's vision of Star Trek was boring. Gene Roddenberry's vision of Star Trek was the cage, the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation, and Star Trek The Motion Picture. If that's what you want, that's all that is really compliant with Gene's vision. Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 6, Gene Roddenberry hated with a passion. So, yeah, don't confuse Gene Roddenberry's vision with good Trek, because very few people consider Gene Roddenberry's vision, or what we've seen of Gene's vision, to be good Trek. Nobody. What do we write on the election ballot? Anti-Trekker or your name? Either one is fine. Trek 95, number 27, seen Bird of Prey asked number 27 was. Actually, no, we played number 28, and then he said, speaking of which, I owe Thomas number 28, so let's play number 28 one more time. There it is. And I love all the little references in there, typical of a Bob's Burgers opening. DS9 is some of the best Trek and clearly would not... Yeah, Gene would have hated Deep Space Nine. In fact, he was opposed to the concept of Deep Space Nine before he passed. And then, of course, he died before production began. But he was opposed to Deep Space Nine when it was just a concept. And, of course, Andy, of course, and Michael J. Crawford isn't running. Well, you could put either one. Wow, Mike, Snake Eyes is a deuce. A deuce for another word for turd. Turd is Anti-Trekker's avatar. Holy Karoga, Anti-Trekker is Snake Eyes. Shh, don't tell anyone. The A-Team says, Lore says 25% is BS. Well, there you go. Lore and I agree on that one then. He's not Anti-Trekker. Karogan has no foreign prisoners on our solid. I assume you mean soil. Yes, Karogan is holding political prisoners. Don't believe the propaganda from some of these Karogans. Cronus says, Anti-Trekker, you piss off people? Well, occasionally, yes. Valor says, well, it seems Kurtzman said that Picard takes place in the STD Season 3 past. Not sure if that is to believe... or if we should be something to worry about. Well, here's the thing. All Kurtzman is saying is that Star Trek Discovery takes place after Picard, right? So the events of Picard are history to Burnham at that point. And Alexander says the Final Frontier is still the best of all Star Trek because Alexander is a nut. So all that really means is that if you look at the timeline, You have Picard, and then whatever it is, like, 700 years after Picard is when season 3 of Discovery takes place. That's all. I don't read anything into it other than that. Now, here's the thing, and this is where we got to be careful, and we all have a tendency to do this, is we read these little interview snippets and little comments made by one person or another in the production, and we get worked up over something that may or may not matter. And quite frankly, that's why I don't care. I genuinely do not care what Kurtzman has to say, because Kurtzman is going to always play up his liberal virtue signaling card, right? Patrick Stewart, same thing. All these Hollywood types want to do is virtue signal. Why? Because if they don't, they get blacklisted. That is a fact. If they don't sit there and try to talk about how the Federation is corrupt in the same way that Trump corrupts the United States government, if they don't actually go along with that, guess what? They never work again. That's how incredibly biased and frankly evil Hollywood production is. If you dare to speak wrongthink out loud in Hollywood, you are out of a career. All right, so I don't care what they say. I really don't, because who knows if it's what they really believe or not. What I care about is what we see on screen. And as far as Picard is concerned, we've seen a couple of trailers. Trailers look mixed. There's some things I like, some things I don't like. I'll wait and see the show. Don't you know CBS can't use stuff they own, says Thomas. Yes, exactly. Yes, I'm not sure if the Galaxy class isn't just fan service and the ships will be like Discovery. Well, I don't know either. And I will tell you, when I saw the short trek, and you guys saw if you saw my review of the short trek Children of Mars, overall I thought Children of Mars was okay, but that shot I did not like. Quite frankly, I find that shot offensive. The fact that they're using McGee class starships in something that takes place after Star Trek Nemesis, I find absolutely offensive. But there's a big old but here, right? I like big butts. This is a big old but. There are excuses that people have put out that make sense. Well, what if those are museum ships? Wait a minute. Maybe those are old ships that they pulled out of mothballs because they needed every ship they could. Maybe this, maybe that. There's a million different explanations for why they might have a 150-year-old ship at Utopia Planitia. So given that, I'm still willing to go into Picard with an open mind, because it's not like we see them tooling around in McGee-class starships. Now, I'm still pissed off about the shuttlecraft thing. That is going to piss me off no matter what. But I'm not going to let that make or break the show for me. Alexander says, 21st century effed. Looks like effed news. We don't need that. That is unnecessary, my friend. Fox, you may not like the Fox perspective, but you know what, Alexander? A lot of people do, so tone it down a little from there. Admiral Saval says, yo, how you doing, Admiral Saval? Jeff says, the real question is, have you liberated 25% of Kuroga? Yeah, not yet. We're still working on it. Let's see. Can't wait for Anti-Trigger to shred Picard. It's going to be so bad. Well, however you say your name, we shall see. We shall see on Thursday. Either I will be pleasantly surprised, I'll be, it was okay, or I'm going to be on a rampage. So we'll find out in just a few days. Stuart says, as I put it to lore related last year at the time, changed everything. Enterprise showed a later era ship at the end of season 3 and seen Discovery with similar to that ship. I'm not sure exactly what you mean there, Stuart. As I put the lore reloaded last year, the time changed everything. Enterprise showed a later era ship at the end of season 3 and seen Discovery with similar to that ship. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Alexander puts another $2 and says, I love Star Trek the Motion Picture a lot. Of course you did. Because you are a nut. You are insane. Echo Best says, we're doing a bonus video where we have everyone takes in full. Stay tuned. That's no... Hey, Echo, look, I am not angry that you only used a few seconds of the footage that I sent you. If it fit in, that's... Look, I made short films, and this was a long form, but at the same time, I get what you're doing. And so, you know, hey, I'm just glad I was in there. We're doing, I already read the ethical Romulan says, ain't trigger all day, no pandering to outrage clicks. Yes, that's true. I will not be pandering. I will tell you what my opinion is, no matter what my opinion is. For fuck's sakes, drop the dead donkey or go stick a fork in a receptacle and get it over with. What? Stuart says, with the technology of Enterprise at the end of and seeing the new Star Trek Discovery technology, it was in the end of the Enterprise series. No, I disagree. I think that the technology in Discovery... First of all, there's two problems here. One, the technology in Enterprise is too advanced, based on what we know of Starfleet history. Enterprise in and of itself breaks canon, which is a problem. Number two, Discovery, the tech we see in Discovery is more advanced than much of what we see in Star Trek The Next Generation. So it doesn't even make sense that, as far as Discovery, doesn't fit into it any better. Jane's Vision had women in miniskirts. Enough said. Actually, you should pay attention. Because not every, watch The Cage again. That's Gene's Vision. Not the original series. Those original series uniforms that are so well known, the red, gold, blue uniforms, not Gene's Vision. Not. Another good animation, says Thomas, but I'm not eating there. Well, I definitely wouldn't. It's for sure. And Mr. Miles is first and says, what have I missed? Not a whole lot except for the unveiling of a new super chat is all. I enjoyed The Cage, and unless you saw it now. Mr. Miles says, I enjoyed The Cage, and I know several people who do. That's fine if you like The Cage. But if you make a series out of that, I'm sorry. It would be a very, very dry series, to put it mildly. And I don't think Star Trek would have survived. Because here's the thing. The Cage, quite frankly, with the exception of number 1, pretty much every character in The Cage felt like generic sci-fi character from the 1950s. And so, honestly, except for number 1, if you take a movie like Forbidden Planet, or even It, Terror from Beyond Space, or a million other movies from that era, it's the same character. Very dry, very bland, very lacking in personality, unlike what we got in the actual TOS. And Alexander puts another $2 in and says, I care about the birds in The Force Awakens. Why? Seriously, Alexander, why do you care about the birds in Force Awakens? That's my honest question to you, my friend. And Mr. Miles says, I would put The Cage in my top 10 favorite TOS episodes. Okay. Okay. Chrono says, just got the notification while I'm, okay. I'm glad you're here. And tied to Alexander, did you know the Klingon captain from Star Trek V was demoted and was the translator during Kirk and McCoy's trial in Star Trek VI? Kronos says, I already read that. It says 45 disturbed the government. Hasn't the government always had problems? Isn't 45 just exacerbating the normals? Also, not a fan of 45, just saying. Well, quite frankly, here's the thing. If you make it, and I don't, obviously we haven't seen the actual show yet. We have not actually seen Picard. If there's a corruption problem in Starfleet, and that leads Picard on this adventure, that could be awesome, all right? It could be very well made. It could be terrific. If it's, they're conservatives now, then I'm going to get a little pissed off, all right? If it's on the nose, this is Trump kind of thing, then I'm going to get pissed off. However, if it's just, hey, there's this problem because Starfleet's not listening and they don't care about human rights or whatever, but they're not pointing the finger directly at a political party, I don't care as long as the story is good. And let's see. Alexander says, I like the birds. They are cool. I care for them. Okay. That's kind of weird, but that's okay. You can like those birds, Alexander. And Sean says, TOS, TNG, DS9, and V, I assume Voyager, also had some awful episodes. That's true. And that's, the thing about Star Trek is that, and not counting Discovery because it's a very different animal, but if you look at classic Trek from TOS through Enterprise, every one of those shows had their shining moments and incredible triumphs, and every one of them had some episodes that really sucked. Part of that has to do with the difference in how you make a television show back then compared to how you make a television show today. We didn't have, even in the later shows like Enterprise and Deep Space Nine, while you had regular head writers and stuff, you still had a lot of people that would only write 1 or 2 screenplays for an entire series, right? You had a lot of people that would write random episodes. And part of it was because it was an episodic show. It was not a serial show like these newer ones are. And so where you have a writer's room and you break down the stories as a team and all that. So it's kind of funny because that's why the writing in Discovery is consistent, even though it's also at a lower level. Now, the problem with Discovery is that the writing is very simplistic. It's basically on-the-nose political commentary and not very well done. And so, and it doesn't feel very much like Trek. Plus, it's like you're centering it around one character, Michael Burnham, and Michael Burnham is written as a perfect character. She's a Mary Sue. Mary Sues are inherently uninteresting, and so you're centering your whole show around this character. I could get past all the blatant ignoring of canon and stuff like that because, heck, Enterprise did that. I could get past all that if the characters were interesting and the story was good. But we don't have that. That's the problem. Is Worf in Picard, or will he be Discovery-fied? That's an excellent question, Sean. And thank you, by the way, for the next £2. I appreciate it. You're being very generous, and I truly appreciate it. If they have Worf in the show, which there's no indication that they will, would they make him a Klingork as opposed to a Klingon? I hope not. I will tell you that if they bring in Worf and they bring him in as a Klingork as opposed to a Klingon, there'll be rioting in the streets. Granted, not much damage will be done because the rioting will be by a bunch of sweaty nerds, but they'll be rioting in the streets over something like that. Because, Worf is a beloved character, and he is nobody's Klingork. But we'll find out. And so, yeah. And there's Captain MKG saying, I thought I already read that. Maybe you put it in twice. About 45 disturbing the government. Sci-Fi Nation says, I like big butts. Anti-Trigger 2020. Well, I'm not going to deny it, both in the context of how I said it and in the other context. With regards to what we have seen on screen with Picard trailer, do we have a screen capture of that Galaxy-class ship showing the name? No. The Galaxy-class ship was only in 4 frames of video, and I captured each of those 4 frames for the video that I put out today, and I showed them all very close up. You cannot see the registry. That being said, if you watch Egotastic Funtime put out a video recently about that same trailer, that there was some footage that was in the trailer that then CBS basically redacted, took out. And in that footage, they actually show Picard and Data on what looks like 10 forward and looking out the window, and then he looks out the window and there's Mars, and he says, I didn't think we were heading to Mars, and then Mars starts to explode, and then he wakes up because it's a dream. And I think the problem is, A, it was a giveaway that it was a dream when he was talking to Data, and so they might not have wanted to show that. And B, I don't know, I'm sure there's a B. But that's where you've seen people talking about how Data looks better in the new version of the trailer, and it's because he's color corrected for being in 10 forward as opposed to being outdoors. That's the only difference. If you look at his face, people are trying to find a difference. He looks the same. He looks the same. It's just they color corrected it to match the environment. And people think he looks better because he looks more yellow. He looks more data because of the lighting. But it has nothing to do, but other than that, his face looks exactly the same. I would still love to see a Magoo-class starship. Yeah, well, yeah. Zachary says, have a punching bag ready for Thursday. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, punching bags definitely coming out of mothballs just in case, and plenty of alcohol nearby. How could you have a McGee-class starship without a Jethro Gibbs-class starship? Whaps everyone on the back of the head. That was horrible, T-Berg. That was just horrible. Kevin says, someone also pointed out in the short trek the school lockers had mechanical locks in the future, which is dumb. Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, honestly, that doesn't bother me nearly as much as the fact that they're in a library full of books. I didn't even call that out in my review. But keep in mind that not too much, what was it, 100 years earlier, Captain Kirk had an attorney by the name of Samuel T. Cogley, attorney at law, who was talking about the benefits of books because nobody had books anymore. Everybody just read things on data pads. And yet, I guess, here are the kids with books. Huh? I didn't make any sense to me. Hello, world. And Darren Wagner, my favorite comic book writer, says, there you go, dissing Enterprise again when I'm gone. Well, no, I'm not. That wasn't really a diss. It's just a statement of fact. Enterprise did, and you know it, Darren, Enterprise did break canon repeatedly, more than any other show shy of Discovery. That being said, I can be more forgiving of Enterprise than Discovery because at least Enterprise felt like Star Trek. And Bird of Prey says, today would have been DeForest Kelly's 100th birthday. Wow. I was so sad when he died. The first cast member of the original series to go. Yeah. And Darren says, okay, did you actually leave the Phantom Menace? No. Well, there's no official. First of all, the Phantom Menace is not a thing. It's just a term used for fans that were sick of the politicizing of Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, etc. I still feel that way, 100%. That being said, I'm just kind of ticked at a lot of people in the Phantom Menace that are currently looking for things to hate, right? That's what gets under my skin right now. People that are going off about the fact that Disney changed the name of Fox Searchlight to just Searchlight. Who the hell cares? Why is anybody worked up about this when it's so obvious that Disney just doesn't want to be associated with Fox? And Fox is still an independent company. Fox News and Fox Sports will continue on. And so for Disney to change the name of Searchlight, or from Fox Searchlight to just Searchlight, makes perfect freaking sense. And yet people are hating on that, right? There's plenty of people hating on Picard right now, even though Picard hasn't come out. I've already seen people posting videos, test screenings of Picard are a disaster. You know, the funny thing is that, I've seen videos that every major, sci-fi thing in the last year has had these mysterious test screenings that were disaster that for some reason people get all this information on. You know what? I don't care what test screenings say because test screenings are just that, test screenings. So if I'm doing a test screening of a show and people don't like it, then you tweak the show and then hopefully people do like it. Because what you do is you say, did you like it? Did you hate it? Oh, I hated it. Oh, really? Why? Well, I thought it was so stupid that you didn't include a Galaxy-class starship. Oh, we got to get a Galaxy-class starship in there. See what I'm saying? That's what they do. And so I do find it very annoying that people get worked up before the show's actually out. Now, granted, a lot of people like the behind-the-scenes gossip stuff. You know, ooh, what's Kurtzman saying? Ooh, what's Sonequa Martin Green saying? Ooh, what's Patrick Stewart saying? You know what I care about is what's in the show. And Sovsborg throws $20 in. Thank you so much, Sovsborg. I truly appreciate it. It says, if you were a time-traveling TV producer and was on the staff of the original series with the knowledge that you have today, how would you change TOS history? I would get rid of the buttons and have a pre-LCARS look. I would not get rid of the buttons. I think that the design aesthetic of the original bridge still works for me. However, what I would definitely do is scrap the really bad episodes and hire someone to be a director of continuity so that we would get straight things like phasers, photon torpedoes, how fast is warp drive, how fast is impulse drive, how does some of that stuff, I would basically work on making canon more efficient, and so that you would set the tone with the original series and continue that through next gen and stuff. I think that would have helped Trek as a whole. That's what I would do. But interesting question, Sovsborg. Thank you, and thank you for the $20. I truly appreciate that. Will you make Alexander your top admiral in your fleet? Will I make Alexander my top admiral in my fleet? No, because he's crazy. I love Alexander, but he's crazy, and he's a communist. And I'm, no offense to Alexander, but we have an ideological difference of opinion there. In a Mirror Darkly is proof enough that Enterprise tech wasn't too advanced. Even the more aggressive Terran Empire's NX class was vastly inferior to a TOS era Connie. I disagree with you, Darren. Not because here's the thing. Yes, the Connie was more advanced than the Terran Empire's NX class ship. Now, first of all, you say more aggressive. There's no evidence that the Terran Empire's NX class ship was any more powerful than the Prime Timeline's NX class ship. But here's the thing. It was still basically it would be like, if you look at the scale of the ship and everything, let's take a ship from, say, the Vietnam era that was a diesel powered, since you're a submariner, okay, so we take a diesel powered sub from Vietnam and put it against one of today's nuclear carriers, right? Now, you would say, well, that's, one of today's modern nuclear subs would take it out probably in a one-on-one fight. Now, let's change the time scale to match Enterprise. So now that Vietnam era diesel powered sub was around for the Spanish-American War. That makes no sense. But you would say, but wait a minute, a modern nuclear sub would easily take it out, so therefore it's the tech is fine. No. Sorry. I just don't buy that, Darren. I don't. I love In a Mirror Darkly. Not Ryan Johnson throws $5 in. Thank you so much. I'm sure the announcement's going to pop up here any second. Good. Really? Really? So it's not going to pop up this time? Okay. Wait, judging a show after you... can't win. Just can't win. It says, wait, judging a show after you actually watch it, you're a rebel, anti-trekker. Apparently, that's my problem with some people in the Phantom Menace, and why I've been going on a little bit of a tirade about it lately. I don't, I'm proud to say, stand with all of the Phantom Menace as far as my opinions on The Last Jedi. I'm proud to stand up with the rest of the Phantom Menace as far as my opinions of Star Trek Discovery, Doctor Who, Ghostbusters 2016, all this politicization, particularly SJW insertion into our great sci-fi franchises. Yes, I'm 100% on board with all you guys. But let's not judge the next show until we have a reason to judge it, right? So with Picard, it's hard to say. Yes, it looks like it's going to be different than what we've seen before, but that just being different doesn't make it bad. What'll make it bad is if it doesn't feel like it belongs in the same universe and it's not an interesting story. See what I'm saying? I want the Picard, I don't care if the Picard series is a totally different kind of story. What I care about is it good? And does it feel like this is actually Jean-Luc Picard, or is this Jake Picard? I don't know yet. I'm actually looking forward to seeing your review as you go in more or less blind, making your review as unbiased as they come. Thank you, Valor. I appreciate that, and that's my goal. TNG's pilot is worse than the Cage, yet TNG survived, and the rest of TNG was based on it. I'm not saying TNG's pilot was better. I'm just saying that the Cage was bad. And by the way, TNG's pilot and the Cage have a lot in common. Namely, that's the kind of Trek Gene Roddenberry wanted. And they had a lot of similarities. They both had very dry, generic characters in it. They were both boring. They both suffered very much from the same type of things. And it's just like, Star Trek, the motion picture, and the rest of the first season of TNG. The more creative control Gene Roddenberry had, the worse the Trek was, in my humble opinion. Trek95 says, I like number 1 and the Doctor in the cage. I thought the Doctor was all right. But was he better or worse than McCoy? McCoy kind of, his gruff personality kind of grows on you. We didn't get enough of, I can't remember the Doctor's name from the cage now, but we didn't get enough of him to really judge his character. But I will say that he felt kind of generic to me. Although I like the bartender scene, but then McCoy would do that too. But I didn't, the problem is that like the helmsman, the navigator, or actually number 1 was sitting in the navigation seat, very flat, very dry. Number 1 was interesting, but only to a point. Spock was, obviously underdeveloped at that point, but yeah. The Cage is such an episode that almost killed Trek before it started. Well, it actually did kill Trek, because here's the thing, and I know I said this in my Why I'm Called the Anti-Trekker video, but I can't stress this enough. People think that the reason that The Cage was rejected by NBC was because it's too cerebral, because, that one line in the review that everybody highlights and shows you and says, look, they said it's too cerebral, they want stupid television. No, the problem was, as I demonstrated in my video, Gene Roddenberry lied. He told them, you're going to get Wagon Train to the Stars. That ain't The Cage, all right? Captain Kirk is Wagon Train to the Stars. Captain Pike ain't, all right? And so what happened was he lied to them. He told them they were going to get a space western, and they got high-concept sci-fi. And they were like, this isn't what you promised. This is too cerebral. Give us what you promised. Westerns are what's big. You said a space western. Give us that. And so then they commissioned the second pilot, thanks to Lucille Ball and all that, and the rest is history. Bob Mike says, do you agree with the Vile Child that I and number 1 not being in the number 1 not being in the second pilot or the rest of TOS was a huge missed opportunity? I mean, they could have kept her and Spock. I do think that number 1 could have been a good character, but I don't know that she would have worked under Kirk, to be honest with you. Because the thing about Kirk is that, and this is a difference between, because with Pike, they kind of tried to throw the romantic edge into it, but it didn't really work. Kirk, it did. Kirk was more of the ladies' man type of actor, William Shatner, compared to Jeffrey Hunter. And I don't know that number 1 would have necessarily worked under Kirk, but I do think that number 1 was a good enough character that where she deserved a shot. So I do think it's too bad. Zachary says, one issue looking at how reality played out, entering the actor who played Christopher Mack passed away in the 60s, so if they went with him, they would have had to cast a new actor for the movies. That's very true. Tragically, Jeffrey Hunter died quite young, and he was actually a really good actor for his day. Played Jesus in one of my wife's favorite old biblical movies. Didn't Voyager nearly tank the franchise? Yes. And in fact, here's the problem, is that Voyager's inconsistent writing, and you want to talk about missed opportunities. The whole thing with having a Maquis crew, that was a missed opportunity right there. But Voyager's inconsistent writing really did nearly tank the entire franchise. And the problem with Enterprise, people think Enterprise is the show that killed the franchise. No, Enterprise just wasn't good enough to save it. It wasn't enough to, if Enterprise had been a little bit better and pushed up those ratings, then it would have saved the franchise. But it wasn't that good. And so Les Moonves, who wasn't a fan of Trek anyway, was like, you know what, this ain't getting any better, can it? And that's exactly what he did. I got it! And Sean puts another 2 pounds in and says, Ellen Ripley would leave the SJWs to the Xenomorphs. Indeed. And she would say, at least they're not effing each other over a political agenda. instead of over a percentage. And the funny thing is that, you know, the way that Alien was written, it was an anti-capitalist kind of vibe there with the company and all that. They were into, you know, Alien, and Ridley Scott was, and James Cameron were intentional about this, was trying to create a hyper-capitalism dystopia where companies and corporations were the real power, and of course they were all incredibly corrupt, and that's where the Weyland-Yutani Corporation came from. But it wasn't hitting you over the head with it, so it's enjoyable even if, yes, you're like me and you're a capitalist. With the Lizards of Warp 10, yeah, oh man. And Ken Jack Ben says, anti-tracker. It's actually anti-trekker, and don't forget the hyphen. Please explain to me why you're against the idea of panels instead of knobs and levers. Because of the simple fact of practicality. For one thing, what happens if there's a power drain on the Enterprise D bridge compared to the Enterprise original bridge? Well, on the Enterprise D, everything goes black. You can't do a thing. On the original Enterprise bridge, the lights may go down, but you can still see the buttons because they're all lit up, and you can actually still function. And and this is absolutely true to this day, touchscreens are notoriously unreliable compared to physical buttons. That's why modern jet fighters still have physical switches. You know, that's the funny thing, is that people think it's futuristic to have these touchscreens and holographic projector displays and stuff. But the truth is that what happens if you crack that screen? Anybody ever crack their iPhone and eventually it gets to where you can't do anything? Well, imagine if you have a wall of iPhones in a combat situation. How long do you really think those displays are going to last? And it's not like we don't see in Star Trek The Next Generation panels exploding in people's faces. So yes, I think it is more practical to have buttons and levers and knobs over having touchscreens and holographic projectors. The Time War made canon into a big ball of mess and needed to be fixed in Star Trek episode. I agree. And in fact, I think the best thing, this would actually be mind-blowingly cool if they actually did it, but I doubt they will. But the best thing they could do with Star Trek Discovery Season 3 is to find this, 700 years past the events of Picard, they find the source of the temporal Cold War and put an end to it, and then it resets the timeline so that they're now back in the 23rd century, but the tech now looks like the original series. That would be freaking brilliant. However, I don't think they have the balls to do it. The Time War I already read that. I don't know why I read it twice. There's Sean's 2 pounds. Thank you again. The birds were the most powerful Jedi in the Skywalker saga. You're starting to sound like Alexander, Kevin. Just saying. Send a handy bird soundbite to your Discord. You're welcome. Uh-oh. Hold on. Now, you see, when Aberjam sends something, now I'm going to have to check. Well, let's see. Do I have Discord up? No. You're making me suffer here, Aberjam. I got to bring up Discord now. So we'll see how long that takes to load up, and then hopefully I'll remember to check it in a minute. If they make him a Klingork, I'll be done with the series. Now, making him look aged with white or gray hair wouldn't be that bad. Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I think that if they bring Worf in and they make him look like an old Klingon, that's fine. But if they make him look like a Klingork, yeah. That will piss me off. It will be a new height to the arrogance of Secret Hideout if they redesigned Worf, who appeared in 11 seasons of television and 4 movies, into one of their Klingork messes. Yeah, I agree. And I don't think they're that stupid. I know that I know that a lot of people are thinking that, Andy Turkey, you're crazy for giving that much credit, but I don't think they're that stupid because they know that Worf is an iconic character. All right, why is it not loading figures? All right, well, actually, I'll just... See, Aberjam, I hate you, Aberjam. I hate you so much, but let's go to Discord. All right, go to the Discord, and we'll go here. I don't... oh, there's Aberjam. Okay. What's this, sir? Download. All right, so... Now we gotta go to... Alright, downloads.
I have sex with she-males every day. I have sex with she-males every day. I love having sex with she-males.
Bird, did you really say that?
I have sex with she-males every day. I love having sex with she-males.
Okay. Well, there you go. Bird said it. I don't know what to say. Wow. And so, yes. Darren said, I already read that. How much are they paying you, Andy Tricker? Tiki, I wish they were. Are you accusing me of being a CBS shill for real? Have you not seen any of my reviews of Star Trek Discovery? Please. I know you're kidding around, but some people will take that seriously. That's the funny thing. Springtime says, do you think Picard will be dreaming about the Enterprise D? Yes, I do. Sean says, and by the way, that's fine, but they damn well better not make Starfleet all Discovery era ships and say, oh yeah, the Enterprise D was around, but we went back to the McGee class. That would be stupid. If that's a dream, and I'm perfectly, the Galaxy class should be an outdated design by this point. So what they should have is, of course, the something more advanced, something more like a Sovereign or something. If Worf becomes a clean orc, would his name be Work? Jeez, that's horrible. Let's see. Thomas puts $1.99 and says, welcome to Bird of Prey, hit list, Aberjam, your pick. So Aberjam, you get to pick a super chat. So put it in the chat. Make sure you put at Anti-Tricker in it so I see it. So I owe you one Aberjam, but make sure you put at Anti-Tricker in your pick. Sci-Fi Nation says, technically I donated you this stream since Bird gave you the $2 I gave him during his stream. So you are number 15. Wow, Sci-Fi. That's all right. That was good enough to where I'm gonna let you have that.
Sir, we are being hailed.
On screen. What is your problem?
I am Lore.
Do you need help?
I have a YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Lore Reloaded.
Let me guess, their rubber band broke, right?
I make YouTube go.
All right, so, and I'm sorry, I missed your comment there, Darth Maul. Said, if you see 10 forward in this version of the Enterprise D, it looks like it's missing. I didn't think it was missing. I'd have to go back and look at the pictures again, but I didn't think it was missing. I thought it was there. Let's see. Darren says, today is also Buzz Aldrin's birthday. Well, happy birthday, Buzz Aldrin. I did not know that. Indy Tiger says, the school is posh and the books are there for children to take a piss on. Wow. Zachary says, maybe they listen to Samuel T. Cogley when it comes to books. Yeah, it must be. Darren says, books are timeless. They're practicalities with books that will never be replaced by digital formats. Well, I understand that, Darren, but in the original series, that wasn't the case. In the original series, books had gone the way of the dinosaur, except for the rare collector. And the Rossadati donated $2 to Super Chat and said, make Bird of Prey say my name. Well, I can't make him do it on my stream, but Bird, on your next stream, you need to say his name. Poor Bird. Resolute says, I can fix all continuity with issues with Trek. TOS is not canon. Wow. Well, that would fix some continuity issues with Trek, but not all. Is it irony that the first cast member to go was the Doctor? Kind of, but it was also logical because DeForest Kelly was the oldest cast member as well. Can you please make a video listing all canon violations in Enterprise? I don't think it's as bad as you say. Could I? Wow, that would take months to research. Could I? Yes. Could I do it before I can do this full time? No. Disney give you a timeshare? That would be nice. Why are you saying this stuff, Tiki? Stop it. People are going to think you're serious. Stop. Stewart says, Enterprise did explain why Klingons look like humans later on in Trek. That's true, and I'll give them credit for that one. It was kind of unnecessary, but okay. But they had to do it because they wanted to have bumpy-headed Klingons in Enterprise early on, and so then they had to explain, well, wait a minute, because before they just left it as a mystery when Worf said, well, you don't talk about it. So now they had to explain it. Valor said, not to forget, make sure the cage footage was destroyed. Well, you know, the funny thing is they used the cage footage in Star Trek Discovery, which makes no sense. Snake Eyes approves of Alex's demotion. Yes, I do. Darren says, the Terran Empire NX-01 had pulsed phase cannons instead of beam weapons and also had a tractor beam. Prime NX-01 didn't have those. I'd have to look at that again, but did it take place later than the NX era? We don't know, but I don't remember if they said the star date, so that'll be interesting. I'll have to check that out. They had shields in the Enterprise Terran Empire. Did they have shields, or did they just have... I don't remember that either. But if so, fair enough. Maybe it was more powerful, but I still don't think that it was as powerful as something from 100 years later. Vile Mike says, never watched the movie Down Periscope. I have not. And Darren says, I'll make a video. You go right ahead, Darren. What movie in the past 10 years would you reboot if someone told you to? Well, it's not within the last 10 years, but if I was going to do a reboot, I would want to do The Last Starfighter. And that was from the 80s, but that's the reboot I would want to make. Darren said, do you think a lot of people today think that SJW leftism is the same as old school liberalism? Steve Shives comes to mind. I do. I think that a lot of people can't tell the difference. And that's a problem. That's a genuine problem. Or as Q joked, it's this John Luck Pickard. That's true. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be the adventures of John Luck Pickard if it's bad. T-Berg says me poo. Chrono says me poo. Thank you both. Sci-Fi says Dr. Boyce. Thank you. Yes. I could not remember for the life of me for some reason. Joseph says, I thought the TNG pilot was fine and I enjoy the first season. The characters grow a lot through the series and it's neat to see where they start. I just got to disagree with you on that. I think Picard was annoyingly preachy. I think most of the characters were very flat. I mean, Troy basically every episode had the same description for Troy. Look bewildered and say, I feel something. Indy says, where no man has gone before was much better than the cage. I would agree with you on that. Sci-Fi Nation says, Pike was already sick and tired of being in command during the cage, his scene in his quarters with Dr. Boyce. That's true. However, I don't know if he was, he was just frustrated. He was kind of like Kirk was in Balance of Terror. I think, he was showing the toll that Starship Command takes on you. Stewart says, Enterprise D had to feed space whales as it believed it was his mother. That was an odd one. That was, yeah. But hey, it's also a hotel in space, so at least they have all the extra energy they need. Rambling Canuck says, my son came to me and said, all people do is complain about Rise of Skywalker. I showed him your review, and he was like, wow, he was fair. Now he watches you. He's 15. Very cool, Rambling. I appreciate that. Your son is probably my youngest regular viewer then. So I'll try not to say anything that'll break his brain. Commander Sutter says, what kind of CPU are you running? I'm looking to upgrade from my FX 6300, and there's so many options, I'm not sure what to get while staying within budget and still future-proofing. My current computer is an i9, I can't see it. Come on, show it to me. I hate this. This one monitor is a little bit off, so it never displays quite right. So bear with me just a second when I bring up... There it goes. It's an i9-9900K is the CPU. i9-9900K. And it performs like a freaking champ. The graphics card is, even though it's spec'd really well, I wish that I had a better one because it's still... That's my bottleneck right now, and that's an RTX 2080. Modern submarines don't rely exclusively on touchscreens either. Switches and buttons are more often what you want. And I couldn't speak to subs, but I've seen the cockpits of airplanes. Corona says, wow, you be popular. Yeah, we got over 100 people. It happens every now and then. It's just weird. I can't believe we have over 100 people watching. And so if you're new around here, welcome. If you're not new around here, screw you. Sean says Star Trek the original series has force fields instead of real bulkhead doors. If there's a power failure and a hull breach, the Enterprise loses air. Well, actually, there are bulkheads and force fields in the original. In fact, if you remember, they had to cut through. They were trying to cut through the bulkheads when the crew got sealed in the lower decks in Day of the Dove. And so, yes, the force fields are to augment. They are not to replace. It's the future. Touchscreen is probably more improved and the glass built stronger. Besides, physical panels are just as liable to break under the stress of space battles. I would, well then, you know, if you want to say that a physical button is just as liable to break as touchscreens, then you tell me why is it that the modern military doesn't use touchscreens for everything. They wouldn't use glass in their touchscreens or use transparent aluminum. Well, you're assuming transparent aluminum works for a touchscreen. And Tiki says, was just kidding. I know, but you know, people will take you seriously though. And the next thing you know, people are saying all over the internet, oh, look, that anti-tracker's a shill. And then, why wouldn't he dream about the Enterprise E? Because that's the one ship that's up until this year, CBS did not have ownership of. The Enterprise E belonged to Paramount Pictures. And now that Viacom has reabsorbed CBS and Paramount Pictures, so they're all under one house again, now they could show the Enterprise E, and it would make perfect sense. However, a month ago, legally, that wasn't the case, which means that they would have to buy a license back from Paramount to use the E, and they're obviously not going to do that, so that, especially when they just own the Enterprise D, so why not use that? Especially since, honestly, while the Enterprise E was the last ship we saw Picard in command of, the Enterprise D is more iconic. You know, when I'll be honest with you, like I said in my video today, I don't like the design of the Enterprise D, but I get more emotional looking at the Enterprise D than the Enterprise E, easily. The Enterprise E was in 3 movies. The Enterprise D was in 7 seasons of TNG. We've seen Galaxy-class ships in Deep Space Nine, and then we have Generations. So it was in a lot more. Where Darren says the Galaxy class, according to conjectural script information contained in the TNG manual, is designed to last 100 years. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Starfleet still uses them. It wouldn't, but except that Starfleet seems to have, by the end of the Dominion War, Starfleet seems to have moved towards smaller, more nimble ships, right? Things like the Intrepid, the Steamrunner, and the Akira. And so it seems like the Intrepid would become the new mainstay rather than a Galaxy class. Tom says, okay, you need to rescue Aberjam right now. I'm trying. People waited 20 years for Captain Riker and the Titan. Picard gave us old, tired Riker in command of a sink full of dishes. Well, first of all, we don't know the story there. All right, Starch. So, and I will be completely honest. In that full-length trailer, I gotta say, the scene with Picard and Riker sitting on that dock, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. That felt like 2 old friends. And so I don't have a problem with Riker being retired. And, you know, who knows? Maybe Riker will do something else later on. Did you go over the whole thing? CBS at 25% difference? Yes, we did talk about that towards the beginning of the stream. 28, of course. And thank you. You are more... thank you to Thomas. And you are welcome from Thomas. And number 28, it is... Remember... Berto, by the way, this started, I will tell you, this whole thing started because I heard on Berta Prey's stream that he hates Bob's Burgers. Man, I just love all the little references in there. They crack me up. Even down to who the people are standing around Bird there at the beginning. If you pay attention, you should be able to identify them all. Mr. Cat says, greetings and down with Kuroga. Hey, Mr. Captain, good to see you. And let's see. Darren says, when Admiral Mendez handed Kirk a copy of General Order 7, it was a book. There were other books on the show as well, but that one I can think of offhand. I understand that's an inconsistency in Trek, but that library did feel a little old school. But, you know, again, I'm not going to quibble over it. I thought the one thing that kind of pissed me off was the McGee-class ship. That pissed me off. The books didn't piss me off. It just seemed like, it seems out of place. If we went back to DS9, do you think Vic Fontaine has a mobile emitter? Not yet. Not unless Starfleet was able to reverse engineer the mobile emitter and start mass producing them. And that's assuming that holograms ever get rights, because as far as we know, holograms don't have rights. Do you think the Enterprise E will appear in Star Trek Picard, or at least we will learn its fate? Doubt it. I highly doubt it. I think that if we hear about the Enterprise E, it won't be till season 2. Do you think the birds would make the perfect? Do you think that birds would make the perfect bridge crew? LOL, I'm just messing with you. I love Depeche Mode, Sweet Shirt. Yes, and this is one of their absolute best albums, Black Celebration. Me and Mrs. Anti-Trucker went to see them on their Music for the Masses tour, and they were freaking awesome. Mrs. Anti-Trucker then saw them for the Violator tour. I didn't get to go because I got called into work, so we gave my ticket to a friend, and then we saw them again in their last tour. Chrono says, "Holy Schmidt, you're up to 107 watchers." Yeah, it's awesome. So welcome if you're new, and if you're not new, like I said, well, you know me. Taryn Archer said, if it wasn't for Vulcan technology, the Empire wouldn't be where it is today. That at least implies Starship ships were on par with Vulcan ones from the Enterprise era. Gotcha. That makes sense. But you see, therein lies the problem of assuming that the Vulcans in the Terran Empire were the same as Vulcans in the Prime timeline. Then the Vulcan ships were much, much too powerful. We shouldn't have seen shields at all. We shouldn't have seen photon torpedoes at all. We should not have seen phasers at all. And we certainly should not have had visual communication. Could blazing saddles be made in today's world? Absolutely freaking not. And that's actually a review I am working on for the near future. Ellen says, how does Superchat work? Never given one before. Usually use PayPal. Do they want my credit card? Yeah, they would. And I will tell you, if you would prefer to use there's a couple of ways you can do it. But if you look at there's a Streamlabs link in the description of this video if you want to do something there, and that you can do through PayPal. I don't know if Superchat if you can do through PayPal. I use my card. Somebody that Super Chats regularly, you could tell me if they do PayPal. I don't know that they do, however. Is 7 9 going to be a series regular, or is she just there for a cameo? From my understanding, she's in a couple of episodes, but I don't know how big her part is. Frankly, I could see it going either way. Same with Hugh. Or assuming that's his name now. I don't know what they're going to call him. But since he's been deborgified. Hit the like, says Mr. Captain. Thank you, my friend. I wonder how Hugh managed to get to Starfleet, by the way. Or wherever they are. Rambling Canuck says the only thing is he's a Ravens fan, and well, he heard you say you like the Titans, so yeah, he questions your NFL judgment. Hey, well, I will say this. It's okay, I am not an NFL, I don't follow sports ball at all. I will tell you that the only team I truly care about is the San Francisco 49ers, because that's where I'm from. And when I was a kid, Joe Montana was king, so even though I didn't care about sports, I knew who Joe Montana was. And so, me and Mrs. Anti-Tracker, whenever we can, we watch the Super Bowl together, but that's the only football game I regularly watch. The funny thing is, here we're dating, you ready? Me and Mrs. Anti-Tracker watched Super Bowl 23 together. And by the way, the 49ers won that one. So, yeah. In Enterprise, they did a lot of nudity because of the decontamination. Well, they didn't really do technically nudity. They had a lot of people walking around in underwear, and I think the decontamination room was quite frankly in poor taste. Darren says, instead of Gorilla Glass, the touchscreens on Star Trek are made of Mugatu glass. Very good. Sci-Fi Nation has an i7 2600K with 12 gig of RAM, but only 1 gig CPU. Yeah, You guys need to step that the GPU is so important when you're doing like if you're using a program like DaVinci Resolve, the one that I use for editing and Mr. Miles uses, GPU becomes really important. Looking at the live chat numbers over 100, what a difference when 20 people was considered a big show. I know, no kidding, Mr. Captain. It's like, it still blows my mind. And you know what I'm really excited about too? And this is just one of those things that it warms my heart, is the fact that, yes, it's very exciting. You know, we right now we're at 109. We were up to 115 for a few there. And that blows my mind. But I love the fact that I'm not the only person growing, right? So now you go to Bird of Prey streams and it's not unusual to see 30, 40 people in there. Awesome. I want them to keep growing. You know, DJ is streaming more and he's getting more people watching. And everybody is just, we're all lifting each other up as a community. And so I love that fact. I want to see everybody, not just me, I want to see everybody's channels grow. Of course, being the greedy bastard, I want my channel to grow the most and first so that I can get all the monies. But you guys, I want to see grow as well. JD Brisbow says, just popped in, notice you were live. Hats off to your video about the Enterprise D screenshot. Great work. Thank you, my friend. It was a very rushed video, but I had to get my word out there because, yeah, I'm afraid people are going to make this into something negative for some reason. But I think it's encouraging. Live with Matthew says, howdy, Andy Trigger and all. How's it going? Rosinante, I missed that super chat. I'm so sorry. I somehow missed that super chat. It says, can Picard still be good? Yes. I absolutely believe Picard can be good. So let me talk about that for just a minute. I think looking at the trailers, putting it all together, and yes, unfortunately, I've heard a couple of minor spoilers, mainly involving the girl. I can't remember her name. And so if you want zero spoilers for Picard, tune out for a couple minutes right now because I'm going to talk about that spoiler because I'm going to tell you guys, here's my honest appraisal of what I think Picard is going to be about. But it does involve that revelation about her. So if you haven't heard the spoiler about the girl, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, you've been warned. If you haven't heard the spoiler about the girl, is that she is a normal human, but she has a positronic brain. She's part of this weird experiment going on. And yes, what we all know, that all the robots are, of course, basically Starfleet manufacturing them, patterned after Data. That was obvious. But then for some, probably because of the synth attack, Starfleet basically outlawed work with positronic brains, but she still exists because she somehow fit into a loophole where I guess it kind of counts as, cybernetic as opposed to, being, an android or just a synthetic. So anyway, somehow she fits into a loophole in that. Meanwhile, she dies, but she has a twin sister that Picard needs to rescue, and that becomes the premise for the show. So here's what I think is going on. I think that the Romulans are working with Borg tech. We already knew they were if you read the Countdown comics before the Star Trek 2009 film. The Romulans are working with Borg tech. They're trying to improve that because the Romulans are so outnumbered by the Federation and Klingons that they're getting a little paranoid. And so the Romulan government is trying to make super soldiers basically that are Borg drones. But they can't figure out a way to control the Borg drones because once they either connect to the Borg collective or something, or they just go nuts or something goes wrong where they can't control the drones. And it's been a source of frustration. So what they do is they get this girl with the positronic brain because they're going to wire her into the system to become a Borg queen and create their own Romulan Borg collective that would be controlled by her positronic brain. Picard gets word of all this, and so his goal is to A, stop her from becoming a Borg queen because the last thing we need is a new Borg collective, and B, stop the Federation from trying to escalate crap because they don't, he doesn't want to see a war with Romulans. And so that's where I think it's going, and that I think is a really interesting idea. And I think that it could be actually pretty darn good. Boy, Auntie's just going to town on that bone. So that's my thoughts on it. That's yeah. Live with Matthew says, howdy, Anti-Trigger and all. How you doing, Live with Matthew? 113 watching, only 57 like it. How is that? Well, I've said before, I know it's very, very difficult and strenuous to hit that like button, so not everybody can do it. Yes, it helps the channel and everything, but I get it. I mean, you got to hit that button, and hitting the button is just painful to do. So, yeah, I understand. And that was sarcasm. So, no, seriously, if you do, by the way, if you do like what you see on this channel, please hit, and not just me, if you go to Birdstream, or you go to any live stream, or you go to watch any video on YouTube, please hit the like button if you like it. And by the way, hit the dislike button if you don't. Why? Because both of those help the content creators. The like buttons help drive more traffic and everything. But the dislike button actually can be very helpful so that the person who is creating that content knows if they're making something that's pissing people off. You know, and you don't want to piss off your audience for the most part. Unless, you know, if you're doing opinion stuff, sure, some people are going to always be rubbed the wrong way by your opinion. But if you're just like, whatever you're doing, like let's say you're doing, you know, battle breakdowns or something like what we do on this channel regularly. If I get a bunch of dislikes on it, then I go, okay, people don't like when I do that. I'm trying to think of something else, you know. Naren says, I didn't say they were still making Galaxy-class ships. I just don't think that they would decommission the ones that are in service after the Dominion War. Their size makes them upgradable. I agree with you in basically in principle there. However, consider the fact that most of Starfleet was pretty much wiped out and replaced during that war. So are there even any Galaxy-class ships left? And Jeff Jacobs throws $2 in. Thank you so much. Says, showing love from your friends at Trek Yards. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. And you know I love the guys over at Trek Yards. They are awesome. And there goes, of course, man, StreamYard's is slow. Mr. Mount says, oh, your son has stepped up his animation game. I can see the improvements. Yeah, I love that one. The Bob's Burgers thing is so, and to me, like I said, look at the little stuff and you see, you know, the inside jokes. Like, I'm sure you guys have figured it out, but who is the person standing in for Gene from Bob's Burgers? And look carefully what he's holding and see if you get the joke. But yes, so he's focusing on the smaller details indeed. But that's the point of the Bob's Burgers intros, is to look for those little details. I'm more inclined to believe that most Galaxy-class ships were only in service for 50 years like a modern supercarrier. Well, I'm more inclined to believe that most of the Galaxy-class ships were destroyed in the Dominion War and were never rebuilt. Berta Prey also hates the Fifth Element, does he? That doesn't surprise me. Sweet Jeebus, you're up to 112. Well, actually, that was a while ago. Now I'm down to 103, so I must be doing something wrong. Thomas says, one question. Why did he show Kirk about Talos? There was nothing to the point in that episode showing Spock's plan. Why did he show Kirk the whole story of Pike on Talos? Well, they were just trying to come up with an excuse to use the footage to pad out an episode, to make a bottle episode double out as 2 episodes because they were having budgetary problems. But B, as it makes sense in that he's just basically trying to show Kirk indeed the power and relative benevolence of the Talosians, and why the Talosians were ultimately concerned about being an open border with the Federation, but that they would make an exception for Pike. Although the ironic thing is that, remember, in the Cage, part of their concern was that they wanted Pike and what's her name, Vina, to be Adam and Eve, to a race of slaves for the Talosians. They're like, oh wow, we don't want that to happen. And so what do? They drop off Pike so he and Vina can be Adam and Eve for a race of slaves. So it's like, you know what they should do is, in the Picard series, we should find out that they have 150 people now that are all slaves to the Talosians. I mean, that was really stupid of them to let them go. Sorry I had to leave for a bit, but I'm back. Well, you're welcome back, Jeff. Corona says, I still have to make meatballs for my aunt and uncle, Anti-Trigger. I'm good at procrastinating. I understand. I am as well. Darren says, we have a visual communication right now. Spock said visual communication didn't take place. Not that we didn't have the tech. He said, nor was there any ship-to-ship visual communication, as if that technology had not yet been perfected. That's what I'm saying. DJ Odyssey says, I'm not dead. Oh, wait, you said the USS Odyssey. Never mind. Yes. Sci-Fi says, Super Chats do use PayPal. Thank you. I wasn't sure. On Bird's live stream last night, someone asked about which Enterprise he liked. Bird said, I like the D, and I'm assuming he meant the ship. No, that's not what he meant. He meant something else. Which season only 8 episodes... Let's see. With a season only 8 episodes long, it's hard to call any character a regular. Also, what's up with these 8-episode seasons we're getting these days? I don't know. I'm tired of it. These streaming services, and you know, it's not just CBS. I mean, even good shows like The Mandalorian was only 8 episodes, and I am sick of these. They're just basically stretched out movies at this point, right? Because Mandalorian, if you add it all up, is only like, what, 3, maybe, well, like 3.5, 4.5 hours of content. You know, I'm tired of that. I want to see 26, 23 to 26 episodes a season. You know, they're getting lazy by doing it on the streaming service because they're not constrained by the episodic formula. But they should be making them to fill a significant portion of the year. Unless you've got another show ready to roll, the minute this show ends, that's another Star Trek show, which they don't, because Star Trek Discovery doesn't come out until like, what, March or April or something. Unless you have another show that's ready to go, you can't do that. You're hurting the fans. How did you get to Starfleet? Plot transporter. You're probably right. Ross and I says, how would you feel about an O'Brien show? I really want that. He's my favorite non-commissioned officer in the franchise. Also my favorite, most appeared character ever. You and Darren Wagner have a lot in common then. I wouldn't mind seeing an O'Brien show, but the problem is I don't want to see more shows centered around a single character. I can see a show centered around Picard, but I don't want to see all the new Trek shows take on this new formula of centering around one person. I think Michael Burnham was a horrific mistake. I think Picard could work, but we'll see. Jeff says, go 49ers. Indeed, I do hope that they take the whole thing. Mr. Morrow says, Ken Jack Ben, I agree, and I've had similar things in the past with anti-tracker. Touchscreens from the 90s are nothing like touchscreens today. Touchscreens in TNG will be nothing like they are now. Yeah, but you know what? Fine. You can argue back and forth. The problem is it's all the future, so you can just write it any way you want to. Trek 95 says, Joe Montana retires as a Chiefs player. Go Chiefs. Yeah, that's true, which is sad. Resolute says, you're a 49ers fan. I have to rethink my support. Well, sorry. Springtime says, the ISS Enterprise NX-01 should have been the flagship of a third world country like Space Power, but they needed a reason for the non-human cast members. Yeah. Greetings, turds, birds, and alpacas, says Wesley. How you doing, my friend? Touchscreen versus switches on a standard keyboard. Person can type over 60 words per minute without a look. Try doing that on a touchscreen. That is another advantage, is that, like Uhura could, and in fact, there are times when she does that, where she'll be looking away from her console while she's hitting buttons. You can't do that with a touchscreen. So that's actually a great point. I stream now. Can you believe that? Awesome, Wes. I know you did, so I haven't gotten a chance to see, but awesome. Trekkers loves Anti-Trekker. We're here for you. Well, you guys are freaking awesome. Sci-Fi says, gotta run Anti-Trekker. Check out myself and DJ on his stream after yours, bud. We has games. Well, there you go. So is it going to be on DJ's channel or your channel? I assume DJ. Because DJ is usually where you guys stream from. Springtime says the Empire shouldn't have been a major power in the 2150s. They should have been a space third world hellhole country. That actually would have been interesting, but yeah. They're not going to do that. Chrono says, I'm very lazy, you and me both. Vedic Burrell was given a partially positronic brain in Deep Space Nine because Kai Wynn couldn't handle peace talks with the Cardassians. Well, I don't remember that. I'd have to rewatch it, but but that's what they're talking about with this girl in Picard. So yeah. Chrono says, I could piss myself off. That takes talent. What doesn't take talent is to piss on yourself. Son of a bitch, I now have to live stream in a unicorn outfit. Damn, I never open my mouth and try to bluff people. So, DJ, so if you want to see DJ Odyssey in a unicorn outfit, that's what he's doing immediately after this live stream. Better start getting changed, DJ, because I'm going to be wrapping up fairly soon here. So, yeah, get your horn ready. Human horn. Stuart says, so the girl has a cyber brain, very similar technology in Ghost in the Shell, which was developed in 2035 in the Ghost in the Shell timeline. Well, yeah, but that's a totally different sci-fi timeline. The only reason I like motion pictures, the Enterprise refit, gorgeous. The rest of the film's below par. TOS third season episode. I agree. I loved, the whole shot of Scotty and Kirk going around the Enterprise in the pod. Oh man, I could still watch that today over and over. That is so gorgeous. Is it possible? Spoilers true. Totally agree with you. It has a lot of positive potential. Yeah, that's the thing. I think that there's the essence of a great story there. So I'm optimistic. I'm hoping that the show is great, and so I'm not going to beat it up before I go see it. Yeah, you're falling now, says Kronos. Yep, down to 101. Well, those were good times when I was up to 115, but those times are the past. Jeff says, Thingland hot death jala? Thingland hoy death jala? Wow, Jeff, your keyboard broken? Mr. God says, Star Trek Guilty Admission. I enjoy the episode Spock's Brain. I actually like Spock's Brain as well. Plus, I have to say that Spock's Brain has a soft spot. I have a soft spot for that episode because it was the first episode I saw after I was born. And where's our Hulk, Blazing Saddles, and Trigun reviews? Yes, Wesley, I know. Keep it up. I know. I got so much going on. Gotta wrap this up. 30 minutes later, gotta wrap this up. Well, you know me too well, Trek 95. Darren says, you're assuming he meant that it was a reference to the level of technology, particularly on the Starfleet side. I'll remind you that we never saw any Romulan ship-to-ship comms on Enterprise. Yes, but he specifically says that no human, Romulan, or ally ever saw the other. So there was no visual communication between Earth and her allies. So, yeah, it's not just the Romulans. That is exactly what Spock says, by the way. Vinny of Hermes says, have you ever thought about you doing an explanation video on TNG's All Good Things future timeline discrepancies? In Generations, we see the Enterprise D was destroyed. Well, not really, because here's the thing about that, is that, honestly, it's an alternate reality. So in that alternate reality, the Enterprise D wasn't destroyed. So I don't think, Vinny, to be honest with you, that it's really a discrepancy because it is an alternate future that didn't actually come to pass. Kevin says, yeah, come to think of it, why do the Theologians suddenly want to help Pike? And in the Cage episode, they had him disgusted with him. He breaks out, they don't let him out. Yeah. Couldn't see an O'Brien-centered show either. I'm thinking a frequent guest star, so it's fine. I'd like to see him captaining a repair ship. I could see that. And now Jeff is saying, I'm assuming that Ho not Delabanpu until Delathja Pan. I have no idea what you're saying there, man. You know I'm dyslexic, so if you're just messing with me, it's not. Yeah, I can't read it. I want a Trek show set post Voyager. What you're getting at is called Picard. I used to be able to T9 text in my pocket with confidence. Now I have a stupid touchscreen. Yep, you can't do that with a touchscreen. Corona says, what? Yeah. Touchscreens are made of rocks in Trek. Well, there you go. That's a different idea. Ms. Mouse says, again, touchscreens in the future mean nothing like today. They do make touchscreens with tactile feedback today. They're touchscreens for the blind. Well, okay, Mr. Miles, I'm sure you could come up with an excuse for everything, but the thing is, under a practical, real-world application, they're not going to make touchscreens for the blind for everybody to use on a starship. And I know that you think that tactile feedback is awesome, but it's not as precise as you might think, and it never will be, because tactile feedback like that doesn't work that well. So I'm granted, there are a million ways you can do it. Why? Hey, how about this, Mr. Miles? Why use control panels at all? Why not just jack your brain straight into the ship? Because you can do that. Why don't they do that? It's more efficient. That way there's nothing to go wrong. You don't have to worry about control panels at all. That's what they should do. And Jeff, please, I can't read those. I just can't. I don't know what you're trying to say. I'm sure it's a joke of some kind, but yeah, I don't know. And Zachary says, 8472 is the most important species. Oh, 8472. Yeah, I know. That took me a while to get past that one. How come Doomcock and Naturally don't do reviews anymore? Well, I actually am working on a couple of reviews, but it just takes a lot of time. I don't know about Doomcock. You'd have to ask him. Let's see. It's not logical to make an alliance with people you have no idea what they look like. Well, but I think what he means is that they never saw each other in ship-to-ship communication. Because obviously humans saw Vulcans, on first contact day. So, yeah. And guys, I'm just going to stop reading the crazy comments like what Jeff put in there. I can't. You were typing Klingon. You see, I can't. I don't speak Klingon, and I never claim to. So, yeah. I can speak some phrases and stuff better than Bird of Prey can, but yeah. Do Klingons have dyslexia? I don't know, but Vulcans do. Stop judging. Well, actually, only Vulcans have human DNA, though. Stop judging technology by the future of today's technology limit standards. Well, you're making excuses based on today's technology standards, so I'll make my counter arguments based on today's technology standards. The point is, Mr. Miles, I mean, sure, that's the aesthetic for TNG, is to do touchscreens. The aesthetic for the original series was to do buttons. For as many arguments as you can make for one, you can make for the other. And even though you might argue that touchscreens will be better in the future, but buttons will always be better than touchscreens. And so you can just go back and forth and back and forth. There's no reason that you have to do one over the other. But quite frankly, I think that touchscreens, I don't like the aesthetic. That's just me. You may like it. That's you. It's personal preference. Would you watch a Star Trek show that has showed a human race far into the future where they're about to evolve into Q-like beings, and Q himself told Picard it might happen in all good things? Would I watch it? Yeah. Would I think it's a great idea? No. Darren says, Spock's statement that no human Romulan or ally ever saw the other via ship-to-ship visual communication doesn't mean humans didn't have that technology. You'll need both sides to have it. Okay, so Earth was the only group that had ship-to-ship visual communications and nobody else did. Oh, but wait! In Enterprise, they show them using ship-to-ship communications with other species. They just avoided it with the Romulans in a very contrived way. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Darren, you're not going to win this one. It's a canon-breaking moment. It's not the end of the world. It's not like I lose sleep over the fact that Enterprise busted it out with the technology, but you're not going to win this argument. The technology, it's just like when he said they were primitive space vessels that allowed for no quarter because they were using nuclear weapons. Well, guess what? Didn't do that either. Can't jack your brain in the ship. Imagine what a daydream would do. Well, that would be interesting. Jeff was just joking. I understand, Jeff, but I can't. The problem is being dyslexic. It actually makes it very difficult for me when people type like that. I think that my eyes are playing tricks on me. But reviews built Antrigger's channel. Well, actually, one review in particular did. But yes, I do need to get some more reviews done. What is the use of a cannon? Well, apparently to blow things up. Especially if you follow what they do in Trek. One of two. You didn't understand my question. The menagerie as Commodore was telling Kirk about Talos. However, at that point of the episode, nothing indicated what Spock was doing. It wasn't until after Spock took the Enterprise over. Let's see. In the menagerie, the Commodore was telling Kirk about Talos. However, at that point of the episode, nothing indicated what Spock was doing. Oh, I see. Why would the Commodore tell him about Talos? Good. That's actually a good question. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch it, but yeah, you're right. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Why would he whip out the general order that shows that Spock and Pike went to Talos? That's actually interesting. I never caught that. Jeff says, sorry. No, Jeff, don't worry. I'm not mad. It's just difficult for me is all. Resolute says, you're completely misinterpreting what Spock was saying in Balance of Terror. How am I misinterpreting it? Primitive space vessels, no ship-to-ship visual communication, nuclear weapons, all of that well surpassed in Enterprise, which takes place before the war. And so, yes, it's problematic at best. The tech in Enterprise is too advanced for the established history. Sean says the Romulans didn't broadcast their images as there was no ship-to-ship communications with visual images. Yes, so explain to me why there was no communication with the Allies when we saw in Enterprise that there were. Let's see. Enterprise D had ceramic tiles because NASA shuttles had them. It doesn't make sense to show future design based on current tech. Yes, but that's what they do. And thank you, Indy. Thank you for the $5. I truly appreciate it. And Laughable Larry puts $1.99. It says, thanks for being awesome. Well, thank you for being awesome. You're twice as awesome as I am. At least $1.99 more awesome than I am. When it comes to sci-fi ships, every single one of them, which has been pretty, the dirty, basically main for the average working man, all have buttons. When it comes to sci-fi ships, every single one of them, which have been pretty, the dirty, basically main for the average working man, all have buttons. I'm not sure what you mean, been pretty, the dirty, basically main, but I agree that when it comes to sci-fi ships, the good ones all have buttons. But yeah. Darren says, I explained to you why you were wrong about ship-to-ship communication in a post on antitrigger.com, and you even read it on a stream and admitted I was right. Well, I don't remember what you said there, but maybe I'm just feeling ornery right now because of all the crap going on in the Phantom Menace. I don't know. But the thing is that I still have a problem. I still think, and I maintain, that the tech in Enterprise is too advanced based on Spock's rendering of history. Now, Mr. Miles says Spock was wrong, an idiot. We saw that in Star Trek Discovery. Burnham had been there. They got the correct info. Yeah, very funny. Yeah, so unless Spock was just plain wrong and the library computers on the Enterprise flawed, and really they didn't use nuclear weapons, and really they did have visual communications, but Spock was just too stupid to realize it. Or maybe it's a conspiracy and Spock was trying to cover up for his sister because Burnham did it. I don't know. But, you know, the visual communication was not limited with allies. It just didn't happen with the Romulans. That's not what he said. That's not what he said. That's the problem. Yeah, triple timeline fixes it. That's why I created the triple timeline theory. It was because that fixes it. And that's the thing. It's not, like I said, it's not the end of the world. It's just that, it is a canon violation. We never saw for all we know, nukes were used. But then, you see, the problem with that, Thomas, is that, so why, if you have photonic, as they call, I love that name, it sounds so stupid, but if you have photonic torpedoes in Enterprise, why would you say, we've got these really awesome photonic weapons, let's throw some nukes at them? Oh, well, but sir, we won't be able to just disable their ships, we'll have to destroy them. Oh, that's okay. No quarter, that's what we want. We're the rough and tumble Starfleet. No, it doesn't make sense. And then Kevin says, I'm confused. The first episode with the Romulans had visual communication as part of the point of the episode. No, but what Spock said was that historically, when there was a Earth Romulan war a century prior to that episode. So Spock was saying in the beginning of that episode, the episode Bounce of Terror, at the beginning of the episode, Spock is telling everybody, okay, so during the Earth-Romulan conflict from a century ago, here's what was going on. The ships were primitive. They used nuclear weapons that allowed for no quarter, and there was not even ship-to-ship visual communication. Therefore, no human, Romulan, or ally has ever seen the other. All right, that's what he said. Now, people interpret that a couple of different ways. One is that, well, the Romulans just didn't communicate with them. Then why would he make a point to say there was no ship-to-ship visual communication if there was, and it's just, he would have said, and the Romulans refused to communicate visually. Why would he say there was no ship-to-ship visual communication unless the technology had not been invented yet? However, obviously the technology was invented. They had photon torpedoes and phasers at that point on the Enterprise, which means that everything Spock said was patently false. I realize that overthinking TNG's all good things, ending discrepancies with poor choice of words. Either way, keep the great word. No, that's okay, Vinny. That's why I hadn't considered that. Spock is right. No human ever saw a Romulan ally. I think you're misinterpreting what he said. Also meaning that humans couldn't communicate with their allies. He said as also meaning that humans couldn't communicate with their allies. Yes, but then, like I said, then why didn't he just say the Romulans refused to communicate, or the Romulans didn't have visual communications? That would have been accurate. Saying there was no ship-to-ship visual communication is not an accurate statement, and that goes against the very character of Spock being precise. That's all he does. How many people will be watching at 3 a.m. Eastern on Thursday? I don't know if I will or not. Also, the Romulans may have used nuclear-based weapons that would have also made Spock correct, thus allowing for Enterprise's tech. So you're saying that everything Spock was saying was just describing the Romulans, had nothing to do with the Federation, and that is jumping through some serious gymnastics to get to that, Darren. I'm sorry. You're way off base now. I had stopped watching the Enterprise because they were doing stuff in the human race that shouldn't be doing at that point in history. Earth at that time shouldn't have been involved in a time war. I agree on that for sure. It's exactly what he said, Andy Trigger. You're just misinterpreting it, and that primitive nukes were primitive photons. Photons are not nuclear devices. However, even if you want to argue that, the photon torpedoes in Enterprise could allow for you to... and by the way, the Enterprise also had phasers, which, you know... So it still makes what Spock said false, unless you want to say, like Darren did, that for whatever reason, Spock was talking strictly about the Romulans and how primitive they were, which means that the Earth got into a war with a primitive species, even though we saw in Enterprise that they already had cloaking technology, and so, but they were primitive in their primitive little ships with nuclear weapons and no visual communication. The latest Enterprise from Picard Trek is 25% variant. Nice to touch. Nice to see. The latest Enterprise form Picard Trek is 25% variant. Nice to see it, but that will be it. I'm not sure what you mean there because the 25% is a myth, which we already talked about. Rob Blair, Enterprise will be fair and balanced, will be honest as he sees it. I will, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. All right, so now I am really going to wrap it up here in just a second. Romulans were probably very secretive during the war and were the ones using older nuclear weapons. Earth just assumed that they lacked visual communication and only used audio. Again, that's not the way Spock described it, and Spock is notorious for being precise. If Spock had meant only the Romulans were using nuclear weapons and only the Romulans didn't have visual communications, that's exactly what he would have said. And so I think, I understand you want to make excuses for Enterprise, that's fine. I'm just telling you what I see. Enterprise is too advanced. What they should have done was had Enterprise take place after the war, not before it. To Spock's historical recall, it could be argued that war could have been so massive that they had to mass-produce ships to fight, so I do understand what you're saying about Enterprise, yeah. Spatial torpedoes, which were used by lesser Starfleet ships on Enterprise, are nuclear. Also, photon torpedoes can be thought of as a nuclear weapon. Photon torpedo is an antimatter weapon, not a nuclear fission or nuclear fusion weapon. Did Kirk ever have contact with Cardassians? Not in canon that I'm aware of. Laughable Larry throws a $1.99 in just because. Thank you, my friend. You're strawmanning again. I'm not strawmanning anything. You're strawmanning by trying to change what Spock said or the meaning of the words he said. Spock is notoriously precise about what he says, and you're saying, but just one time he was being vague on purpose, just because. I appreciate the cautiously optimistic view on Picard and Trigger. Despite 2 seasons of disappointment with Discovery, I'm still excited for a new Trek. Me too. Thomas will be awake, so I'll be watching Picard. Very good, Thomas. I don't know if I will or not. Read my post on antricker.com and eat crow again. I don't have time tonight, Darren. I got to get going. It took visuals comms with Romulans and meaning... I took the visual comms with Romulans and meaning previously they didn't allow anyone to see them and they kept to themselves. No one ever interpreted it that way until after Enterprise came out. I'm curious, who violated TOS canon more, Enterprise or TOS itself? That's funny. Enterprise had phase pistols. There's a difference, apparently. Yeah, apparently. Ross and I says, let's call Star Trek Discovery a sexual transmitted disease, when most likely is. Well, I'm hoping season 3 isn't. You have been waiting, you've been wanting to leave for a long time. Well, that's because my knee's acting up and I do need to wrap it up. And it's about dinner time. I expect Enterprise to be a serious version of Lost in Space, where they have no idea what's out there. No idea. No Klingons bringing Time Wars, those blue guys. Well, but we see the blue guys. If one side doesn't have visual communication, there'd be no visual communication. Darren, you're beating a dead horse at this point. Springtime says, Earth government and later UFP were very unsure of Romulan tech, and he was just trying to be precise and was logical with crew who already knew about the war. You're assuming that the crew knew about the war. The Romulans still had old-style nuclear weapons aboard Balance of Terror, so I have to agree with you. They even called them old style. But yeah, transphasic torpedoes song, really weird. Okay, Matthew says going off the triple timeline. Then I don't care if Enterprise is more advanced. It's a little piece of headcanon that won't let me enjoy Enterprise movie. That's why I created the triple timeline. It makes perfect sense. It explains that whole thing away. Spock also said Klingons have no tear ducts. We saw Klingons cry and talk about weeping all the time. Yeah, that's a problem. Because what happens in Star Trek is that they commonly write, the writers, the big problem with Star Trek, and by the way, guys, I'm stopping with the comments because I can't keep up. So I apologize if you're talking to each other, great, but if you're trying to talk to me, I'm not going to get to it at this point. But this is a problem with canon in general and with Star Trek. Star Trek has been sketchy with canon from the very beginning. Like Mr. Miles jokingly said, how many, what violates TOS canon more, Enterprise or TOS itself? And now with TOS itself, obviously, yeah, there are lots of things you can argue about. Heck, phasers set to proximity blast, right? Instead of photon torpedoes. How about, do the shields need to be up or down to fire your weapons, right? You can apparently fire torpedoes with the shields up, but not phasers. And stuff like that. All right, so that is all real problems in TOS. A lot of that can be written off as being, well, they were still developing, they're still trying to figure it out, and that kind of thing. And they only had 3 years. Had the show gone on longer, then they would have probably been more consistent. All that being said, the writers, and this is a problem that started in TOS and goes all the way to today. The writers don't give a crap. The writers do not give one fleeing piece of my avatar about canon. They don't. The only thing they care about is what they're writing at that moment. And if it happens to violate canon, they don't care. That's the problem. That is at the center of the problem. Now, in the original series days, up through the Enterprise days, that was common with all TV shows. And the problem is that there had never been anything like Trek before. There's never been anything where you had series after series after series after series growing in popularity over decades. That's never happened before. They've tried doing spin-offs before, but guess what? Did anybody give a crap about the canon of Jody Loves Chachi compared to Happy Days? No, because nobody did. And most of the spin-offs were failures anyway. However, and the only spin-off of Happy Days to really be successful was Laverne and Shirley, and that one had its own canon. It's like you look at Laverne and Shirley, you look at Happy Days, it seems like they take place in 2 different eras. So, yeah, nobody cares. Writers don't care about canon. That needs to change. Do you know why Battlestar Galactica 2004 was so good? Because Ronald D. Moore did care about canon. And he cared about being consistent, and he cared about telling a consistent story throughout the whole thing. Unfortunately, in Trek, even though Ronald D. Moore got a start on Trek, that's never been a concern of the writers. And that's what I hope will change, but probably never will. Anyway, guys, that is going to be it. So thank you for hanging out with me all this time. I do truly appreciate it. Don't forget to go to DJ Odyssey's stream where you will see him dressed like a freaking unicorn, apparently. So, and BSG was not canceled. I'm talking about BSG 2004. It was planned from the beginning to be 4 seasons. And I heard Ronald D. Moore say that early on in the series. So he said, yeah, this is going to go for 4 seasons. All right, guys. Take care. Have a good one. And see you tomorrow, I hope.
You son of a bitch, anti-tracker!